Hello, this is my response for discussion week 2 response. Um, so first and foremost, we're talking specifically about children with traumatic brain injuries, but I think this applies for all children who have a disability or are dealing with a disability. Um, First and foremost, I think when it comes to the needs of the student, family is part of it. So I usually use Bronfenbrenner's ecological model so that everything is interconnected from one thing to another. And so if the child is receiving resources or needs are trying to be met, that means that the family is also trying to get those needs being met as well. So I think having a support system for educational purpose would be the IEP group or the team, which entails the psych, the teacher, the gen ed teacher, other resources that might be needed, speech pathologists, etc. But I think that just encompasses the educational purposes. It doesn't encompass the whole child, so services and needs that might be required, as is stated in the question, who are chronically ill or hospitalized or in transition from hospitalization. So for those type of needs, I think having specific resources that can continue to educate the child if they're continuing to be in hospital or at home and are at risk of coming to school, providing an equivalent or a substitute to that specific resource at home so that they're still receiving the needs that are trying to be met. When it comes to things outside of just the educational purposes, part of the goals of an educational team or an IEP team should be to support the families as much as possible. So if the family is struggling financially, who can provide information that can further support them? Well, the IEP team can be a source of intermediate between those programs or resources that can help support that family financially through struggling times, especially when you have a child who is dealing with coming in and out of the hospital or currently in the hospital. And making those accommodations. Another thing is, family needs support in finding meals. Again, because of economic struggle or whatever the case may be, having a child who's currently in and out of the hospital or in the hospital, that can also be a big issue when it comes to providing meals for not just that child, but the rest of the family, even themselves as parents. Another thing that is important to realize is reaching out in a sense of honest concern for the families themselves as well, because yes, although the main focus is on the child and the student first and foremost, if their families, specifically their parents, are not doing well, whether that's physically, emotionally, financially, then you can't expect the full needs of the child to be met. Because realistically, if a child is feeling concerned or stressed and anxious about their family's situation, whether it's financially or emotionally, then that too affects the child's well-being as well. So being able to ask and provide support for the parents, not just financially but emotionally, so if they need therapy or psych services or just someone to listen to, it is important to have that type of support for the families. One thing that we can do to create better families is essentially what I just said, which is speaking to the families. And it's not just about the educational purposes, and yes, that is very important and very liable, and I understand that. But from my experience, families will not open up about their true concerns if they don't feel like the educator is genuinely concerned or knows about them when it comes to what the child has been open about. I heard you guys are really into going camping. It's just an example, but the fact that the families can hear that from you makes them kind of consider, hey, this person is really genuinely concerned, and here's what my child has to say. So it gives them more of a willingness to open up about certain things. Or even just calling home and saying, hey, I know so-and-so has been out for a few weeks. I just wanted to check in, see how it's going. I particularly currently have a child like that in my class who she's out, at least once a week, but then a few weeks will pass and she'll be gone almost the whole week because, she has to go to the hospital and get checked and get this and that. So we make sure that, when she comes back, or we call home and say, hey, how you doing? What can we do to help? It's that relationship that allows for a dynamic to support the child in its whole needs. Because once again, the whole needs doesn't tell just the child, it tells everybody else that's within that child's inner and outer circle. Some of the barriers is sometimes families will not feel so forthcoming about educators or people wanting to be supportive with them. Sometimes they feel like they're intruding, which is totally understandable, especially for a situation like that in which somebody outside the family is trying to come in and support them with their child. Excuse my dogs. So that's just kind of the biggest thing to think about.